Inteleon is super popular in the trading card game right now, so I figured I would build an entire deck purely focused on Inteleon and making use of Inteleon VMax to really spread out your damage and take multiple prize knockouts across your opponent's board. If that's something that interests you, be sure to stick around for the deck profile and some matches afterwards. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel as it really helps me out and I do post content fairly regularly. So let's get into this deck profile and see what we have in store for our opponents. Here's the deck list that I've got for the Inteleon VMax. It is very much focused on just Inteleon, the Pokemon itself, as we'll see as we go through these cards here. But starting off with Inteleon VMax, if you're not familiar, we do have two great attacks. We have Hydro Snipe, which allows you to deal 60 damage to the defending Pokemon for just 1 energy, and you also get to put an energy from the defending Pokemon into your opponent's hand, so very good there for setting them back a turn. If it is a slow deck which is only attaching 1 energy at a time, then this is certainly going to slow down your opponent even further. And then the main attack that we are focused on here for 3 water energy, or 2 water energy and a colorless I suppose, but it is max bullet for 160 damage, and then you deal 60 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. You don't apply weakness and resistance as usual, but that's quite alright as we have a bunch of other ways to increase this damage. So we have things like the telescopic sight, which allows you to increase your bench damage to Pokemon V by 30. This is going to mean that you're dealing 90 damage to Pokemon V, allowing you to 2-hit things like Crobat, but for the most part we are going to be just setting up knockouts on bigger Pokemon V. And then we do also have the Quick Shootings Inteleon, which just does allow you to deal 20 damage to a Pokemon of your choosing on your opponent's side. So again, this is going to increase that bench damage even further. We do also have one copy of Shady Dealings Inteleon, just if we need that even more consistent feel throughout the deck. But for the most part, we're just using the Shady Dealings on Drizzile here, as it allows you to search your deck for a trainer card when you evolve into it. The Inteleon, of course, is the exact same, but it allows you to get 2 trainer cards instead of just 1. And then it does also have a nice attack. I've not personally used it either, but Aqua Bullet, just like with the VMAX version of Inteleon, deals 120, and then you do get to deal some bench damage. Like I said, doesn't come up all that often, but could be relevant. And then of course we have 4 Sobble to accompany our 4 Drizzile. It is indeed the Sobble from the recent sets, which has Rapid Strike, which is going to allow you to search out all the rest of your Sobble if you do have to start with this and you don't actually have your Inteleon V. But for the most part, you want to start with your V and get that energy down nice and early, and then you can quickly build up the VMAX with Melanie here, as you get to accelerate an energy from your discard pile onto one of your Pokemon V, which means that you can get Inteleon VMAX set up in just 2 turns essentially. As long as you go first and get that first energy attachment down, then you should be in a great spot. But for the rest of the deck, you can see here that we're playing maxed out copies of things like Quick Ball, Level Ball and Evolution Incense in order to ensure that we have enough consistency to get our Drizzile and Inteleon into play. And then of course we're playing 3 Path to the Peak to counteract any opposing Pokemon V abilities, as it's really going to help us out and make a lot of matchups a lot more favourable overall, as it can sometimes be a close match, shall we say, when we are trying to set up knockouts perfectly. But that is the deck. We do have a couple of niche cards in here like the Palpad. I do like it being in here to recycle Melanie or Boss's Orders, but for the most part it's just going to be super consistent overall, as the Shady Dealings can allow you to search out everything that you need. And the huge amount of sniping damage potential from Inteleon, as well as the regular Inteleon with quick shootings, is going to allow you to really target down those bench Pokemon and take them off the board and take multiple prize turns as well. So let's get into the games. We'll go through just how well this deck works and why I feel like it's going to be so effective and so popular in this coming up meta. So let's get into it. Give this video a like if you enjoy it as always, and yeah, let's get into this game, see how we can do. Kicking off our first game here, we have a pretty nice start with the double Sobble. Looks like my opponent is going for the same idea as they also start with the Sobble. Definitely makes sense. Now they grab the Zacian, so it is going to be the Zacian Zamazenta deck from the looks of things, considering they did discard the Zamazenta here, and they are also playing it with Inteleon, so very interesting combination, as there is a lot of Zacian Zamazenta going around, but typically it is just on its own without the Inteleon, so we'll have to see how well this fares for my opponent. We have a couple of Quick Ball that we can play out as well, discarding a Water. Definitely a good start so that we can get the Melanaze activated. We are going to be losing a Palpad here, which is a little unfortunate, but as long as we can get our Pokemon set up, that is going to be the main goal right here. And we can go ahead and play our Professor's Research, since we are going second, so we get to make use of our supporter. And we even get an energy attachment for the turn, as well as another Quick Ball. I think I might go for the second Inteleon, just in case my opponent gets a big attack off, plus a boss, but considering they don't have any Metal Energy, they're likely not going to be using Metal Saucer, so I think I will hold on to this hand for now. Seems fine, as we do have the Level Ball, so we could actually get out all three Drizzile on this following turn if we need to. My opponent plays down another Zacian here. They are playing the Cape of Toughness, so that is certainly something to consider, playing something like a Tool Scrapper in order to deal with the Cape of Toughness and just any annoying tools in general that your opponent might be trying to use. Or if they're just trying to use utilities like Air Balloon, then even getting rid of those could be very beneficial. So Tool Scrapper, definitely a card to consider, but this is just a initial baseline build I have of the deck, and I don't want to be taking it out too much. I'm just going all in with our damage as much as possible. My opponent looking to get set up with the rest of their board, they go ahead and grab a Crobat. Definitely a good option here. They also play down the Stadium. The Crystal Cavern allows them to heal 30 damage on their Metal and Dragon Pokemon. Typically just going to be using it on the Metal Pokemon though, I would imagine, as they look to be tanking up those Zacian as much as possible. If we can get down a Stadium card of our own though, that is certainly going to help us out. Going to prevent things from like the Intrepid Sword. Yeah, Intrepid Sword ability that they just used there. And we did top deck another Drizzile, so we do have that going for us at least, as it will allow us to shuffle our deck and counteract that Marnie that my opponent used there. So definitely going to be evolving the active, and we could grab a Melanie. We could also grab a Evolution Incense here, build up the rest of the board, which I do typically enjoy doing, so we could actually get the Level Ball. Since we have more of those, it makes sense to go with that route first. So we'll Level Ball for another Drizzile, and then we'll use the Shady Dealings on this Drizzile to get another Drizzile, and we can then actually take advantage of the last Drizzile that we get here. So here comes the next Level Ball, getting a third Drizzile. My opponent's going to be pretty concerned at this point with the amount of Pokemon that we're flooding the board with. Yes, we want to use Shady Dealings. Now we have to decide what it is we actually want. We could go for an Air Balloon so that we can have a guaranteed retreat, or we could also go for a Melanie. We do have a couple of options here. I think I will go for the Air Balloon though, just so that we can guarantee a nice retreat here. And we can also get an energy attachment, which is always helpful, before using Professor's Research, discarding the rest of that hand. We do get another Sobble, which is nice. Unfortunately, we did pick up the Air Balloon there. And I think we'll go for the Evolution Incense, getting our VMax into play, so that we can then take a knockout on my opponent's active Sobble in the near future here. So let's go with that, and we do also protect our Drizzile. We got a Quick Ball as well, so I kind of want to get another Inteleon so we can start powering that up pretty quickly here. We'll discard a Water Energy as we don't need it at this moment. Definitely getting that out, and since we do have the 4 Drizzile, I suppose we could put this Sobble into play. No reason not to. and we'll go ahead and attack this Sobble for 60 damage, getting the knockout there, taking the first prize of the game, which is excellent. And we do pick up another water energy, which is really nice to see, because then we can attach it onto the benched Inteleon V and use a Melanie on our active and start dealing some big damage here. My opponent does promote the Zacian, so they're going to be using that Brave Blade attack and dealing a lot of damage to us, which is always concerning because they are going to be hitting our Inteleon VMax, something that is going to be difficult to deal with. But considering they are being pretty slow to evolve their Sobbles into the Drizzles, we should be able to take some nice knockouts there. And we do also have the option to deal some damage onto the bench Zacian if we want to go for that route. I think we will have to try and find a path to the peak though to counteract my opponent's stadium. Otherwise they are going to be healing off a lot of our sniping damage if we do choose to deal it onto the Zacian there. Would certainly be helpful in order to get some easier knockouts, but here we go. My opponent is using the Brave Blade attack, dealing that 230 damage, and we do top deck a VMax, which is quite nice, so we can certainly put that into play. Ain't gonna complain there, and we'll go for the Melanie onto the active to draw our 3 cards. Do pick up a couple of paths to the peak actually, so pretty reasonable draw overall. The only downside, of course, is we are going to be knocked out on this following turn, since my opponent can easily retreat into that benched Zacian they have powered up there. Really wish we'd got a couple of Inteleon as well, that would have been super useful, but I think dealing the 30 damage onto the bench Zacian is going to be relevant enough for us to actually make use of it, as we can then go ahead and get an easier time for a knockout if we do that. The other option, I suppose, is we are dealing a total of 60 damage, so we could just take out a Sobble here for an easy prize card, and it means that my opponent has less options overall. So sure, we'll go with that. We'll take out a Sobble instead, take the easy prize, and we can easily build towards taking out these Zacians in the coming turns. We do pick up a boss's orders, but it's not going to be super useful. Just realised I probably should have put down a path to the peak anyways, because my opponent does get that 30 damage heal, so definitely should have done that regardless, as we do have 2 of them in the hand. But hindsight is always going to be 2020. My opponent is going to be able to attach more energy here. They go for the switch, and they can then retreat this Crobat into the fresh Zacian and hit us for the knockout. We're going to be looking for a water energy here, as we do have the attack with our new Inteleon VMax, so that's going to be fine as long as we can find the water energy. Regardless, if we don't find that, then we could still deal a small amount of damage, but it's not going to be particularly relevant. Mainly looking for some Inteleon with quick shooting though, that is the key right here. We do pick up the energy, which is perfect though, so you'll love to see that, and we'll definitely go for the Melanie so we can get the full damage output of Inteleon VMax here. We do also pick up an Inteleon with shady dealings, which we could potentially make use of. I'm going to retreat into the VMax because we're always going to be doing that. Put down a path to the peak, and no real reason to quick ball or play out any of these cards other than our Inteleon. So we'll put that guy into play, use our shady dealings, and we can go for a Evolution Incense, and I perhaps think a level ball so we can get a Drizzile. Seems reasonable, as we don't really have much else that we want to play. I suppose we could get a Scope, but my opponent still has that Sobble on the bench, so we can snipe that. Don't really need the Scope just yet. So take these 2 cards and build up the rest of our board here. Level ball for the Drizzile, then Evolution Incense for the quick shootings Inteleon. And as you can see, we really start to build up our board as we have a full board of Inteleon, which is the whole game plan right here. I think now we can take the Scope, as we don't really have a lot else. I suppose we could take a supporter card, but we're going to be taking an extra prize card here, so I don't really mind taking the Scope, and it also gives us an option to hit into this Zacian for a decent amount of damage overall. So I do kind of like this as a puts a lot of pressure onto my opponent if we do it this way. Do quick shootings onto the Zacian, which already has a bunch of damage on it. That'll bring it down to 120. We could then do around 90 right now, but like I said, we want to take this easy prize so that my opponent doesn't have access to a Drizzle, and it means we only have 3 prize cards left in order to win this game. So should be in a very good position in order to close out the match. We can actually just take a knockout on both of these Zacian here, as they both have a significant amount of damage on them. We're doing 160 to the active, which is going to knock it out, and then this benched Zacian only has 120 HP. So assuming of course we get the Inteleon, we should be all good. My opponent gets a Tool Scrapper out. That's going to get rid of our scope, so unfortunately we aren't able to deal that 90 damage onto a benched V Pokemon. Perhaps could have held on to that in hindsight as well then, so my opponent didn't have that play. But they do get the switch and they retreat, so they're going to be able to get another attack in here. But of course, with the amount of damage on these Zacians, it's going to be on us to try and deal with them. The Cave of Toughness really coming in clutch there as well for my opponent, as it has a big buff of HP on this Zacian. Otherwise we would have been able to knock it out a lot sooner. We do pick up a Capacious Bucket, not going to be super relevant at the moment. Of course we could always use the boss's orders as well as a potential option in order to hit into something here. So this Zacian already has a lot of damage, so it has 60 HP remaining, which means we could actually boss up the benched Zacian here, deal 160 to that one instead, and that is actually going to be the game. So let's go for that. We have the boss play, swap around the Zacians, and then we can go ahead and snipe the bench, taking a double knockout on a Pokemon V in the active spot and on the bench, taking the last 3 prize cards of the game. And that is exactly the power of Inteleon there. When you have a full board of Inteleon and Drizzles, everything's going your way, you can take multi-prize knockouts like that, and that's exactly how the deck is intended to work. Really great feeling. Let's get into the next match. Going into game 2, we have a pretty much the same situation as before, except not quite as many Sobble on our end, but my opponent is starting off with a Sobble on theirs, just like the previous match, and we have a pretty sweet opening hand. We have the energy attachment, plus we are going to be losing a Drizzle, but we have 4 of them, as long as we don't have any prize, but we can check that right now with this level ball. And we are going to be of course searching out a Sobble, but there we go, we have 3 in the deck already. We do prize a quick shooting Inteleon, which is a little bit of a shame, but other than that we look to be in good stead here, as we have a good amount of everything else in the deck that we would want. So we can level ball for the Sobble and attach the rest of these cards from our hand before using a Professor's Research. We're just looking for a couple more Sobble here or Drizzles, which we do find, and this hand is honestly pretty good overall, so I'm pretty content with that. And we can attack our opponent for 40 damage, not a huge amount, but it is going to be putting us in a perfect situation here, as long as my opponent doesn't find any other basic Pokemon to put onto their bench. If not, then we could just easily win the game on this following turn, as we can deal 60 damage with our Inteleon VMax. Looks like they do have a basic Pokemon though. It's going to be the Dragapult V. So their deck is very much similar to our own, where they're going to be evolving into the Dragapult VMax and then using the quick shooting Inteleon in order to spread a bunch of damage across the board. The advantage of course that we have is that we spread a lot more damage, and we also do a lot more damage up front. The Dragapult VMax only deals 130 damage to the active, whereas our Inteleon VMax will deal an additional 30, it's 160 damage up front, so we should be in a pretty good spot overall, since we have a higher damage output than our opponent. And of course we can accelerate our energy, so we are able to actually just keep up with our opponent despite them having a slightly lower energy attack cost. Now my opponent did get the Drizzle there, so they do have a good shot at being able to keep this alive if they want to retreat it here, but if they do leave it in the active spot, then we're fine to knock this out, as it does have a total of 90 HP, and with the Inteleon VMax dealing that 60, we can knock out the Drizzle no problem. My opponent did go for a Crushing Hammer there, but luckily for us it was a Tails, so we get to keep our energy around. Not that it's going to be that super relevant, since the 1 energy attack cost is all we need to deal that 60 damage. And of course we do have a double Drizzle in our hand, so we can search out near enough everything in our deck that we could possibly want to get. My opponent is just looking to set up the rest of their board though, and that totally makes sense to me. I think we'll be going for a big play on this following turn, looking to max out our damage and deal as much damage as possible overall. So with that in mind, we're going to evolve into our VMax. We will Drizzle, search out a Quick Ball here in order to discard one of our water energies, and also get another basic Pokemon, most likely just another Inteleon V, so that we have it around and we can start powering it up with some more energy. And then with the other Drizzle here, we're going to actually grab the Melony, so we get the full effect that I was talking about here. So let's go over to our beautiful full art Melony, attach a water to the active, and Melony 1 there as well. Draw a bunch of extra cards, which is always helpful. Don't really need anything else out of this hand, but I suppose we could always Quick Ball to get a third Sobble into play. Don't hate that. So let's get a water energy into the discard once again. Don't really need that in our hand at the moment, so we can just get another Sobble. And we will go for a potentially double knockout, although we do have the scope, so dealing 90 onto the Dragapult would also set it up for an easy knockout on the VMAX, and I think we will just go for that. Sure, we could take out my opponent's outs with that Sobble there, taking a 2 prize turn as well, super helpful, but honestly, there we go, we have everything that we need, so my opponent is just going to be conceding, as we're putting way too much pressure on my opponent, and that was only the second turn of our game as well, so very high pressure deck that your opponent is going to have a lot of trouble to deal with. Going into this game, our hand is looking very much similar to the previous game, as we have a sweet start here with our Professor Research and Livable combo, so we're in a very good position to get everything rolling as it should. Not quite sure what my opponent is going to be playing here. They have a Coughing that they're getting out of the deck, and of course they have an Applin in the active here, so real strange mix of cards, but I'm sure it'll pay off for them and have an interesting deck for us to witness. But right now I'm just seeing a lot of low HP Pokemon, and that is something that we can definitely take advantage of with our Inteleon sniping ability. Well, I say ability, it does have an ability, but also the attacks as well. We do pick up a Path to the Peak. I'm not sure how relevant that is going to be against my opponent, which has only put down non-V, non-rule box Pokemon, but you never know, they might have a Crobat or something, so we'll put it into play anyways, and we don't have any Pokemon V with abilities anyway, so it's certainly not going to hurt us. We do get a Quick Ball here, some reasonable stuff, but nothing too crazy. I think we'll likely hold on to this Quick Ball for the following turn, so we'll just hit my opponent. Now we could hit into the active Applin, since it does have 40 HP, we would get a knockout there, or we could snipe onto the bench, but I think we'll go for the active since it does have the energy, and we don't want them dealing any damage with that Pokemon. Pick up an Evolution Incense, which is perfect. That's going to get us all of our Drizzle. Sure, we could have put down the Quick Ball for a 4th Sobble, but having 3 down is just fine. And we do have the VMAX in our hand as well, so this hand is looking very strong right now. My opponent evolves into the Wheezing, which is actually the neutralizing gas Wheezing, turning off abilities, but it's going to be interesting to see what they go for here. They do hit us with the poison as well as the boss's orders. Now, the neutralizing gas does turn off all abilities apart from neutralizing gas, so it does mean that our Drizzile abilities, the Shady Dealings, is not going to work unfortunately, but we do have the Inteleon VMax here as well as an air balloon, so we can easily retreat out of this poison, and we do have the Quick Ball plus Melanie combo if we want to go for that, or we could just attach to the active regularly, but I think we want to be quite aggressive here and try and get the full attack off in order to get rid of this wheezing as quickly as possible. So we will grab another Inteleon V rather than the Sobble, and we'll go for the Melanie on the active, looking for another water energy. There we go, we find two. That's everything that we need right there. No point in playing out the rest of this hand, as we can't use the Drizzile at the moment, but that is going to be the game anyways, because that benched Applin does only have 40 HP, like we dealt with the first one, so we can easily get a victory on the second turn of our game once again. Super high amount of pressure, as you can see. The Inteleon deck is just completely relentless, and low HP Pokemon like that stand no chance whatsoever. Let's get into one more game and see what we can make happen. Getting into this last match, we do have a Sobble start once again, which is as expected. It is in the odds anyways that we are going to start with Sobble, since we have 4 of those and only 3 Inteleon V. But sadly we don't have a good hand for the rest of it, and my opponent is going to be playing the Urshifu VMax, the Rapid Strike one, so they have a similar game plan, going in, dealing some big damage, and then dealing some sniping damage as well. We'll have to cross our fingers that we get out of this pretty terrible hand, but at the very least we can use our Sobble to search out some more Sobble, thinning the deck and hopefully getting us closer to some Drizzile. My opponent does mulligan, so that's going to help us as well. We do pick up a level ball, so we can always hold on to that for a Drizzile in these coming turns. My opponent is going to be starting off here with a Vaporeon V, a new card from the Evolving Skies set, which was recently released. Going to be interesting to see how they make use of that for sure. And they do get the Quick Ball for a Remoraid. Going to be looking to get the Rapid Strike in Octillery so that they can search out some Rapid Strike cards. They got their Urshifu down with the Scope, and they just have one card left in their hand. We do pick up the Professor of Research off the top deck, which is excellent. That's going to give us a good amount of draw here, and we are going to be losing a couple of good Pokemon, but that is just going to be what we have to take here. I think we could just put this balloon onto the bench Sobble. Honestly, my opponent is likely going to be knocking out our active one, so there's no real point in putting the balloon there. We'll just research away this hand, get into a fresh one, and we do pick up a much better hand here. A lot more options that we can work with. We can level ball potentially for some stuff. Probably just going to hold it though for a Drizzile. I suppose that makes a lot more sense, since we are going to be using the attack on Sobble in order to search out more Sobble. So we'll just use the Capacious Bucket, get a Quick Ball to discard a Water, and get out an Inteleon V. And now we can put this Path to the Peak into play in order to prevent my opponent from using something like a Crobat. And we'll go for our attack, getting our other 2 Sobble into play. So we're now in good stead. Unfortunately, we did have to go for the attachment on the active to use that attack, so our Inteleon V is a little bit behind, and it's going to take us an extra turn in order to get the full effect out of the VMAX. But we do have an Evolution Incense, which is going to get us towards all of our Drizzile. So it's on my opponent to also keep up with us. If they want to try and be in this game, they're going to have to really push ahead and put on a lot of pressure, like what we usually do here. Opponent is going to be using a Evolution Incense on their end to get the Rapid Strike Octillery, and from there I'm guessing they've got a Karina's Focus in their deck, which will allow them to draw 6 cards, which is exactly why they weren't worried about having a 1-card hand. And oh no, it's not that at all. They have an Urshifu VMax, Their hand is completely empty and dead here, but looks like the Vaporeon V does allow you to draw 3 cards here with its first attack, but it doesn't deal any damage, so that's going to be helpful for my opponent as they do draw cards there. Obviously super good for them, but it is going to be very slow as well, so it does give us extra turns in order to work with our board and get the rest of our board set up here. We have a Evolution Incense getting another Drizzile. We want to check if we have an Air Balloon still in the deck. We do indeed, so we can use that to retreat at some point, although I suppose the Drizzile does have a 1 retreat cost, so evolving the active isn't so much of a big deal. We can always just retreat with the energy that we have already. We can then use the Shady Dealings to get a level ball, use these level ball here to get out more Drizzile, and these are just going to set up the rest of the board really nicely here. This Shady Dealings is going to get us something else though, since we do already have the level ball for the last Drizzile, so I think we can use this one to get a quick ball so that we can grab ourselves another Inteleon V. Definitely makes sense there. And we can use this level ball, like I said, to grab our last Drizzile out of the deck. Using this one to likely get a Ordinary Rod, as that's going to shuffle in the Inteleon that we had to discard earlier. Now we do have to attach some energy, of course, so we can use the Melanie here to get the double attachment onto our Inteleon V before using our Ordinary Rod and shuffling in the 2 Inteleons from our discard pile back into the deck. We do also get a couple of energy out of the discard pile and back into the deck. Go for the quick ball, discarding a water. Now I do realise that we did just shuffle in some water, but I do want most of them in the deck, and of course we can always retreat here and go for our Evolution Incense, grab out the VMax, and we're going to be in a perfect spot now for this following turn where we can start dealing some major damage. Now we do also deal 60 damage to the active here and reset my opponent's energy, so that's going to be putting them back a turn as well, and it's going to be putting us in a great spot to start dealing some really big damage and setting up knockouts across my opponent's board. Do have to find our Inteleons with quick shooting though. I think we have prized one if I remember correctly, but perhaps I'm just thinking of the one that we discarded. We'll have to see. My opponent does bring out the Vaporeon VMax, so that is going to be part of their game plan here. It is a Rapid Strike Pokemon, of course, so they can take advantage of a Rapid Strike energy, and it has some interesting attacks which can be fairly damaging, but it looks like they are focused on using the Urshifu here. They're going to be able to deal 150 damage into our Inteleon, which is certainly good news for them, as they need to be able to deal this damage in order to stay in the game. They're getting the Pissimian here, so they're looking to do some sniping damage on the following turn. Definitely don't blame them, as that's going to allow them to knock out a bunch of our Drizzile, and that will definitely put us back quite a bit. Actually going to go for the Professor's Research here so that we can try and find some Inteleon. Our Inteleon with quick shooting does have 150 HP, so normally we would be able to survive, but with this Pissimian it does buff attacks, but okay, it is only for V and GX Pokemon. That is perfect, so we can actually put this into play, as that means it won't be knocked out when my opponent goes and uses that sniping attack. And we do also get another VMax here, which is great news. Could go for a Capacious Bucket, but doesn't seem super relevant right now. I'll go for a Path to the Peak though, just in case my opponent is playing something like a Crobat. And we have to decide where we want this quick shooting, as it will likely be relevant, so I think we will want to put it onto the Vaporeon since we're going to be sniping some damage. Alternatively, we could put it onto the Artillery since it does have 110 HP, but I suppose doing 60 to it twice will easily knock that out, so we'll just use our quick shooting onto the Vaporeon, keep its damage up as much as we can, and then we will use our max bullet attack, dealing 60 damage potentially onto the Vaporeon. I'm very tempted to deal damage onto Vaporeon, but I don't think it's going to be super relevant overall, and I do kind of like taking out the artillery because it is a consistency engine for my opponent here. So we're going to deal it onto the artillery. Then on the following turn, assuming of course my opponent isn't knocking out our VMax, we're going to be able to knock out their Urshifu quite easily, as they're likely going to be sniping and taking a knockout on 2 of our Drizzile. Definitely a big loss losing 2 Drizzile, but it should be fine as we do have our Inteleon VMax set up here. They are going to be grabbing another stadium in order to replace our path to the peak. I think that's more just for them to be able to retreat rather than actually using any abilities, but they do retreat into the Vaporeon here, so they're going to be looking to protect their Urshifu, but we do have a boss's orders, but that Vaporeon is dealing enough damage in order to get a knockout. We do have our Inteleons protected, or Drizziles I should say, but we're going to be a little bit behind here because we don't have a backup Inteleon VMax, which is a little sketchy to say the least. Now we do have an Evolution Incense, we can grab a Inteleon with Shady Dealings. That is going to help us out quite a bit, as we can get 2 trainer cards out of the deck here. Going to grab the Melanie, as well as potentially grabbing something else here. I'm not quite sure, there's not really anything that we need. I guess we'll just get an Air Balloon in case we need to retreat, as that seems fine. There's not really any other options. And we'll go for a Melanie, putting 1 onto the Inteleon VMax, and we do also have the Capacious Bucket here, so we can grab another Water Energy and get that attached. Slap that onto our board here. We do have the Quick Shootings, we'll want to use that of course. I'll Quick Shootings onto the Urshifu, that seems reasonable but also not relevant overall. Suppose it is going to be relevant if we want to get a knockout though. So we'll put 1 onto the Urshifu, then we will retreat into our VMax. Nothing else we want to play out other than this path to the peak to prevent my opponent from freely retreating to their leisure. I will hold on to the Pal Pads for now, just hit into them for 60 once again and take this energy away from them. I want to limit their energy attachments and really make them consider where it is that they're going to be attaching energy. Force them to have all of the resources as possible. So let's see what they have as an answer here. Certainly going to be in a good spot. If they are just dealing 200 again, then that's going to be fine by me. If they go in with the Urshifu and deal 150 again, that's also fine. Taking out 2 Drizzile, if they're able to go in and snipe with the Urshifu, that's also fine. If they take out 2 of our Drizzile, that puts them down to 1 prize card, and with the boss's orders in our hand, that'll be just fine by me. They do go for an escape rope though, so we could put up our Quick Shootings, but they can then knock that out. So I think the best option here is likely going to be a Drizzile, because then if they take the knockout on that, I don't mind losing a single Drizzile. Let's see what my opponent goes for though. They are going into the Urshifu, makes sense to me, is going to allow them to deal 150 damage if they choose to use that attack, but if they instead go for the other attack, then that's going to be just fine too, as we can then go up and take a knockout, deal some big damage to that Vaporeon and be in a real nice spot here. I suppose they are going to be maximising their damage onto our Inteleon VMax though if they are going to be sniping, as they do have the scope here, just like our deck. They have the scope which is going to increase their damage, and they have that Pissimian, so they're going to be dealing a lot of bench damage onto our Inteleon VMax, and yeah, that is exactly what they go for here, 180 damage. That sets it up so that they can take the knockout with the Vaporeon, but of course it does lose them all of the energy there, so puts us in a spot where we could use our boss's orders and potentially do some work here. Now the Vaporeon VMax does have 180 HP, so we could actually knock it out if we use a Quick Shootings as well as the VMax. Now if we do that route, the Urshifu has 150, so we're not quite going to be able to get a knockout on there. Our Inteleon has 140, so yep, that is going to get knocked out by an Urshifu. I think my opponent has checkmate here, to be honest, as we don't really have a lot of outs, unfortunately. The Vaporeon, it does have some decent attacks here. Put a water Pokemon, okay, that's not great. And 100 plus 100 is going to be 200, which also not so sad, but they do need the energy for that. I think we just have to retreat here into our VMAX and hope for the best. So we're going to be attaching. We have the boss. I don't care about the Vaporeon, I don't think, as if we knock that out, then my opponent can easily just retreat or just go for this play, I suppose. We hold the air balloon, we'll put the Pal Pad, shuffle in a couple Melonies. They can always be useful if we do survive this turn, and we don't have anything else there. Go for the quick shootings onto the Vaporeon, and here we go. Let's go for a max bullet, also damage the Vaporeon. Just make sure that we have as much damage on there as possible, and we will take a knockout on the Urshifu VMAX. We're picking up a water energy here. We do get another quick shootings, and we do get an Inteleon V. Let's see if my opponent has the energy, then they are going to be able to take a knockout here, and yep, it looks like they do have it. That is a real shame, as we're just hoping that they didn't have it. We would have had game, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. I suppose they did have the artillery, so even if it wasn't in hand, they could have just searched out. So yeah, it was very much checkmate from my opponent there. I was just really trying my best to find a way that we could win that game, as I was really thinking that we were going to win that one, but wasn't to be. And we did pick up some easy wins earlier on in the video, as well as that first game being really close, which was an awesome feeling in order to win that super close game. But yeah, that is the Inteleon VMax deck. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, give it a like if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.